episode of The Hustling Agent, we have a local Sacramento appraiser named Ryan Lundquist. Ryan is a wealth of knowledge for all of us local agents here in the Sacramento market. I learned a lot from this episode. I hope you did too. Check it out. All right, folks, we are here today with Ryan Lundquist. We were just talking offline. Ryan, I'm excited to do this one more so than some of the other because Ryan is a local Sacramento-based appraiser, right? And that's my market, so I have the source, right?
Right on.
How's everything been these last couple months now, right?
It's been a wild ride. It's weird. The pandemic, it's awful, from a health standpoint and, economic standpoint, but it's been fascinating, I think, from a market trends perspective, just to say, what's the market doing and to gauge that on a daily and weekly basis. It's been absolutely incredible, actually.
So just because I know many of the viewers will expect this question before we dig deep on some of the other things, what kind of trends, activity have you been seeing on your end?
Well, I think what's happening in Sacramento is something we see in a lot of markets across the country. And I think it's so important just to back up first and say there's no such thing as a national market. And, we all know that. And so there's not one trend that can explain away every single market in the United States. But I think in our market, what we saw a few weeks where there was a dramatic shift down. And so, listings weren't coming in the market, pendings dipped by 45% in just 3 weeks. But we've had almost 6 weeks in a row now where we've sort of seen the market sort of lift itself up out of that bottom, where we're seeing more listings hitting the market and we're seeing pendings steadily increase, week by week. Every single week has outpaced the previous week. And so it's this weird thing where I think a lot of people are looking on the market and thinking, it's got to be tanking because we're in the middle of a pandemic. But I think, that's not really the narrative right now. The narrative is that buyers and sellers are coming back to the market as they feel comfortable and as they're getting used to things. And I've seen that dynamic across in many markets across the country, as I've seen, friends sharing graphs or, data I'm reading, stories I'm reading. And so it's really interesting to see this unfold.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, so for our viewers and listeners, today is May 15th. So we've been in lockdown in Sacramento nearly 2 months. And I think that what we're experiencing is not only Sacramento, it's nationally, is that first people were scared. What do I do? I have no idea. And then people, especially entrepreneurs and people with needs, pivoted quickly. Right? So first you froze and business kind of stopped. And then people pivoted and, these smart realtors all over the nation were able to figure out technology to make it happen. And buyers and sellers still needed to do what they needed to do. We were getting somewhere kind of really interesting offline that I want to bring up now is because you were saying that the pandemic is an opportunity for agents to be educated, right?
Absolutely. I think what it has done is it's sort of been like a mirror to, for us to reflect. And I think in a sense, this pandemic shows us who we really are in a lot of ways. We see our flaws or personally our eating habits and, like, oh my gosh, what is the matter? How come I keep eating everything? And so, but it's not just about that. I think professionally what it does is it dismantles this system where it's so easy in real estate to paint a rosy narrative of the market or to, operate in Clichéville and to just, spew cliches out there for clients. And I think that it's easier to be much more successful in real estate in an upward market where all we say is prices are going up. But what I've been talking about really for years is like, look, at some point the market will do something different. And I'd say first, it's probably too early to say that we're at this tipping point. I'll say that we're in a pandemic and we need time to see how this, changes and unfolds. But I think if anything, we sort of take inventory of sort of the content that's coming out, on our social media and what we're saying to people, because we just have to realize that those same cliches won't work anymore because people are hungry for actual data. And I know you and everyone in real estate is getting asked that question. What are prices doing? What's happening in the market? And so I think that when we are able to come to people and say, here is definitively what's occurring, it gives us so much power. And in a market where, tech companies are rising and really gaining so much power in real estate, one of the reasons why they're gaining power is because they're controlling the narrative and they're talking about data and they're I think reaching into that need in the public to know more about the market beyond just the expected cliches. And so not to sound negative at all with what real estate agents are doing, I'm extremely positive, but I just feel like for appraisers, agents, loan officers, it's time to sort of up our game and embrace that role as market storytellers if we want to have authority in the marketplace. If we don't, then let's keep saying the same old cliches, and then people will pass by until they find a data source for, oh, here's what's going on.
Oh man, that is so good.
So
okay.
and can I share something really cool? I don't know, have you been following Mike Del Preti at all?
Not the last couple of weeks, but
okay.
I do know who he is.
He's awesome data scientist out of Colorado, but he said in a video this past week, I thought it was so good that where a lot of people are feeling uncertain about the market, and the truth is nobody knows, nobody has a crystal ball, but I loved what he said in that when people are uncertain, give them data to replace their uncertainty, because we can meet people where they're at and say, well, look, we don't know the future, but here's what the market's doing right now. Like someone just texted me before this began, they texted me this article from bankrate.com that said that, prices are down 3%. And I gave data from Sacramento to combat that narrative that doesn't fit, the local market, and to say, well, here's what the market is doing here. And that's exactly what we can be doing in our local spheres.
It kind of can feel sometimes that many agents have never really taken the time to know the data and the numbers and really come with that knowledge. I mean, I'm sure my first couple of years as a realtor, I never looked at any of that, right? But there's so much data out there. So if you were to think about the most important things for agents and loan officers to know about their local markets, what would those numbers be?
No, that's great. And first I'll say that there's no one way to do it. And that's the wonderful thing. There's no formula that everyone has to follow, but I think there's a few fundamental questions. I would say, what's the market doing and why is it doing it? And then on top of that, is this normal for this time of year? And so it's like we want to, as each month happens, we ask for May, like what does the market normally do in May? And so we're able to explain, well, is this normal or is it not? What happens in June and such. But I think backing up, just paying attention to sort of the basic stuff. What's the months of supply? Is the market balanced or not with supply and demand? And what's happening in the psyche of buyers and sellers? That's sort of your word on the street. Like agents have so much sort of anecdotal evidence for what's going on based on the conversations you're having. But otherwise, geeky metrics, I would just say price trends. What's the median price? And what's happening with sales volume? And here's my main issue sometimes in real estate. We focus so much on prices, but when a market changes, the change happens first in the listings, that aren't selling or that are selling more. And then it shows up in the pendings, what's getting into contract. Then eventually down the road, it shows up in the prices. And so sometimes the danger in real estate, we're so focused on this over here, the prices, that we're missing the real trend that's happening right now. And so I almost feel like in real estate, sometimes we need to sort of reverse our thinking and start educating clients saying, hey, the trend is happening in the listings. And that's why we don't want to get stuck on the high sales from the past. We want to look and go, what's getting into contract right now? What's going on in the pendings? And so I would just start giving a lot more respect to the pendings, especially imagine if we had a market that started to decline. Then it's all about not looking at those lofty sales, but hey, where are the pendings? The pendings are down here. This is the market, and so that's kind of it. I mean, honestly, I follow so much stuff, it's ridiculous, but not everyone's going to do that. But I would just say, get in the habit of maybe, once a month, when the first of the month rolls around, just start asking yourself those questions. What normally happens in real estate this month? And sort of, check different sources. Okay, what's going on with sales volume? What's happening with listings? What's happening with sales prices? And I think as we begin to do those things, and as we begin to recognize what is it that's really driving the market, is it mortgage rates, or, I mean, whatever it is, I just feel like we gain so much power. So, and I feel like that was totally vague, but there's not like a 3-step plan to being a market expert. It takes hard work, and it takes us paying real attention.
Well, everybody in Sacramento, for our listeners who don't know Ryan nationally, is he puts out an amazing blog and shares it on Facebook, and all of us just go to him for all the data. So maybe the advice is find your local somebody like Ryan who gives out the data. So what I look at it every day in a couple different aspects, and I want to run those by you because you really got me thinking about what I've been seeing now. So I look at the 24-hour watch from the MLS, and I always try to keep in mind what day of the week it is. Right?
Smart. Good job.
Thanks. Okay, good. But I look at the new listings, and I look at the pendings and the pendings bring back up, and try to remember where we were last week or last year and last week. While we're at it, last week, and think about what day of the week it is. And what I've noticed is I feel like the number of new listings is down by about 30%. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, we're down the past 3 or 4 weeks, it's been down anywhere from about 30 to 40% from last year. Absolutely. So there's really hundreds of missing listings each week.
Yeah. And then, hundreds of missing listings each week, like 500 to 700, right? Plus. And I'm also seeing that the pendings and pending bring backups, we'll just call them both pendings for the sake of it, are higher than the amount of new listings.
They were, and then listings is sort of, there's still technically more new listings, like on a weekly basis, but it's a really tight gap. And so that's why, I mean, I've been actually telling sellers like, hey, if you feel safe, it's actually a good time to put your house on the market. There's a lot of eyeballs here. And so, but yeah, I mean, technically there are more, but a couple of weeks ago, there were actually more pendings than new listings, which I think is what you're referring to. But these past couple of weeks, ever since in Sacramento County, it became buyers are able to go in homes now with certain rules. It really changed the number of listings hitting the market. And so we began to see a couple hundred more each week. And so since then, I think buyers are going, great, we need more listings. It was getting a little too tight. And so, but it's still, I mean, it's really tight because the number of pendings keeps increasing also.
I mean, and I'm feeling it because I carry a ton of listings. I think I have 50 something right now. And the reason I have so many is because the days on market has gone up. From, just that's how I feel it is in general. There still are the multiple offers, but I feel like days on market overall has increased. Is that accurate, or are you seeing something totally different?
Well, I mean, days on market declined from March to April, but what's happening in the pendings right now, kind of like what we were talking about. And I haven't looked at days on market among the pendings yet. I do look at the number of multiple offers, and sort of that's been increasing over the past 6 weeks. Makes sense as sort of the market is trying to figure out normal and coming back. But that's something I'll have to look at though. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what I feel, because I'm saying, why hasn't this house sold? Why hasn't this house sold? It's marketed right. Price looks good. And the sellers, I think you nailed it, is as long as they feel safe, it's still considered a good time to sell because we know what's happening right now, right? And it's impossible to say what the future holds if we ever get let go of lockdown.
I know. I hope that happens. Yeah. And, one thing that I was actually telling a group yesterday, and I ended up writing it, I did some consulting with a seller who is overpriced on the market right now, I think by about 10%. Okay. And that's not, you can't sell in today's market. We're a very, very price sensitive market. But one thing I noted is this geeky, important data point that on May 22nd in California and in Sacramento, we're going to have unemployment numbers come out. And so I said that our unemployment numbers are bound to be astronomical. We typically follow the United States. The US is just below 15%. And what's going to happen to the psyche of sellers and buyers when this comes out? And so to the seller, I said, look, we don't know the effect that will have, but that's bound to start making a difference. We start to hear the governor talk about state employees should take a 10% reduction, or we need to furlough state workers. Everyone's thinking that's so 2008, bro. But I think that for the seller, I said, recognize what's happening in the market. We have a price sensitive market. If you price it right, you'll probably get 1 to 2 offers, maybe 3 if you're lucky. But if you're overpriced, you'll get 0. But recognize the climate and recognize next Friday, 1 week from today, there's going to be some new data out there. And that might cause some buyers to put their foot on the brakes. It might cause some sellers to want to say, I'm going to put my house on the market before it all implodes, right? That's the psyche, and that's, I think, the mentality. Now, that's just pure conjecture right now, but I think from an honest, intellectual, logical standpoint, we're looking and going, that could make a difference for some people. And so it's definitely on the radar. Then I hope what will happen is that today, when the agent sits down with that seller, is that they'll have a real moment of reflection and say, yes, we need to change things right now. And so we'll see.
Yeah. That news from Gavin Newsom just this week, I think it was just yesterday, right? About the furlough.
Yeah.
We live in the capital this is where everyone lives who works for the state, a large amount of people. I was going to call my staff this morning and go through the pipeline, the pendings, and say, who works for the state? Who knows who works for the state, so I can watch this file. It's going to be really interesting, man. Yeah, it is so 2008. That's something else I was thinking.
Yeah, and the state's really the number one employer locally. And, if it got bad, some state workers might get early retirement, and so maybe they're just going to retire locally, or maybe they go, how far will my pension go in Idaho? And so I think there's a lot of layers, but the thing is, it's we're watching the market and going, who has incentive to buy and sell right now? And, based on trends, how do I need to position myself for the future? Not, taking out my crystal ball, trying to prophesy, but just looking and going, how might what's happening right now affect, the mentality of buyers and sellers, and who has incentive to play the game in the future? And so, that's what I'm all about, just kind of look into that. And I think just what we're talking about right now, we're going, oh, we're identifying these might be groups of people, or just like you're talking to your agents, who's working for the state? Pay attention to this.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's so insightful. So I think if you were just to wrap up and just give advice to real estate professionals, besides being educated on everything and thinking about this, what else would you tell them as far as their activities and how to think?
Yeah, well, I think I can speak from personal experience where I know a lot of realtors, obviously, but I've been blown away with some people, the way that they're serving and the way that they're caring. And so I think that during this pandemic, people aren't going to remember, the data we shared. They're going to remember how much you cared. And so if anything, when a market changes, regardless of what happens in the future, when we put people first, that's the most important thing. And so if anything, people just need to know that they're cared about, and, business sort of takes care of itself. But I think that when we really, really put people first like that, everything falls into place. And so I have seen, agents personally, someone dropped off some beer on my doorstep the other day, and it meant a lot to me. Or someone saw me on a Zoom call, and this was a realtor who just said, hey, are you okay? I kind of heard in your voice, it seemed like things maybe weren't right. And it's that level of care was just incredible. And so I think that as people do that kind of stuff with their clients, then that's what people remember. I mean, that is darn well what I remember personally. And so that would be what I would say.
Yeah, good advice. So, um, one question that popped into my head for you, and I hear about this less frequently, but the appraisals. How do you see tech changing that process going forward?
Man, that's a big question. So it seems kind of like the lenders and data companies, Fannie Mae, they're all sort of wanting, to sort of digitize appraisal, so to speak. I mean, that's happening in real estate too. I think appraisers are just sort of the first ones that get to feel that. And so my sense is that their goal is to sort of have this a more limited appraisal. And sometimes there's been talk about someone else doing the inspection and an appraiser doing the analysis. I'm not crazy about that idea. I kind of hope that doesn't take foothold. I know data companies are salivating at that, but the futures. I would say that the 40-page reports are sort of probably going to be a thing of the past at some point. There's going to be new appraisal forms. They say that they're coming out soon. We'll see what they look like. But I'm thinking that lenders in the future are really saying to appraisers, we want your analysis. That's what you bring to the table. That's what is really valuable here. And so, we'll see kind of how that works. There are right now more appraisal waivers also. I'm not sure that that's a great thing for the health of the housing market. I think it's an understandable thing. There's a place for that within the marketplace also. I'm not naive about that. So, but we'll see. I mean, it's sort of all up in the air, but at the same time, it's been up in the air for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Every year in the appraisal circles, like, oh my gosh, everything's changing and this is it. And so, at some point we just look and go, well, change is happening, but maybe it's slower than we think. And we'll see how this video ages. Maybe I'll say something new in a month, but
Maybe.
so far the humans are still in the game.
Yes.
And I hope that they'll always have a role. The role of an appraiser plays is not always fun for the transaction. I know that for any realtors watching,
Sure.
but it's something that's necessary. We need a systems of checks and balances within the housing market. Can we trust banks to do their job? Right? Can we trust banks to make the right decisions? And I think I have a pretty good sense of what that answer is. And so somehow we have an imperfect system right now, but even if we switch and we go all like computers, guess what's going to happen? We're going to have an imperfect system.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing as perfection, and I think we just have to realize that in humility, even among agents too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, what most agents fail to realize is that in 2006 and 2007, when things were going crazy, like, yeah, we need these systems. We absolutely
do. Yeah, and really, I mean, I know you need to get out of here. I do too. I think in a sec, but
Yeah,
as much as things are a pain sometimes for the appraisal process, there's some value there, and real estate is so emotional, but it's not a fun thing when someone overpays, even if they get an appraisal waiver. Like in the moment, it feels really good, but do you know what doesn't feel good? When they go to refinance because rates went down to 2.8%, and then they realize that the house was never worth that last year, that they overpaid by 30,000. And so, I think appraisers, obviously we have imperfections, but I would just hope that, within real estate that, appraisers can do a good job and sometimes say, hey, like, value's not there, right? I think sometimes we've lost our sense of negotiation where it's like we expect like that 2005, hey man, can you hit the number? Like we expect that and just without realizing that, like, values should be coming in lower than the contract price. That should be a normative thing, because it doesn't always represent market value when the seller and buyer agree, right?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely. And we don't want to see what happened back in 2008. It was just a bloodbath.
No way.
If people want to reach you for more information or follow you for more info, where do they find you, Ryan?
Sure. I'm on all the social platforms, but my hub is sacramentoappraisalblog.com. I love Twitter. I'm at SacAppraiser. I'm in the lab coats group and stuff. I'm in all that. I'm probably in most of the big realtor groups also. So would love to talk shop with anyone.
Yes, guys, make sure you connect with him. I'm glad that I have. And man, I'll see you soon, and you take care of yourself. Stay safe out there.
Hey, you too. Thanks so much. Appreciate getting to be on today.
Thanks for watching today's episode with Ryan. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, like us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you found us, and we'll see you next time on The Hustling Agent.